Have you ever wanted to become a model? Well, there's probably been some point in your life where you've entertained the thought or even come to grips with the fact that modeling may or may not be for you. And that's okay, modeling isn't for everyone, but it does affect all of our lives in some fashion. You just can't miss the intrigue and polarizing aesthetic that the fashion industry carries nowadays. If you scroll through your For You page or YouTube Shorts, you're bound to come across someone telling you how to become a model, what agencies are looking for, and so on. Given the aura of mystique and exclusivity around the modeling world, it's clear to understand why people want to learn how to become one. In this video, we'll be identifying the specific facial features that modeling agencies are looking for this year, and we'll likely even delve into 2024's predictions. We'll first try to cover our journey and exposure to the modeling world until this point and some broader, well-known features that agencies have always been looking for. And towards the end of the video, we'll try to answer the question, how does this affect you as a consumer of fashion brands or just an observer of the constantly shifting beauty trends in the fashion industry? In the past on the channel, we've made a lot of modeling related content. We've talked to female and male models such as Karl Kugelman and interviewed different founders of different agencies, and we're generally quite exposed to the fashion industry as a whole due to the nature of our works on aesthetics. Talking with them did give us a deal of insight into the current state of modeling at the time, but now we want to set our sights for the future. We recognize the criteria to be a model is quite selective. Just to give you a taste of that selectivity, our team decided to go to some of the top agency management sites such as Elite Models and just gather some of the stats on the heights of 98 female models that made up the Los Angeles division of their agency. Unsurprisingly, of the 98 models, the minimum height was 5'7" and the tallest were 5'11". While we would certainly expect some messing around of the numbers, as agencies don't want to market models that are either too short or too tall to their clientele, this actually gives us an even better idea of the height ranges that agencies actually do want. The average height was 5'9" 3/4", while the most common height and the median were 5'10". Either way, you get the point that models are above average tall. Preferably, it seems like being right around 5'9" to 5'11" for female models is the sweet spot where most models lie. That is already well within the top 1 to 2% of female heights in the United States. Now let's assume that they also are looking for a face that is within the top 2 to 10% of attractiveness as well, then the chances of possessing the criteria to be a model, at least at Elite, is approximately 1 in 2,500, and that's being quite generous. If you want to have a better chance and be 5'11" with a highly attractive face and the trendy features that we're going to discuss, for example Yasmin Winderlim, then this could easily skew towards being 1 in 100,000 people or even greater. Simply put, the industry is very selective, and being a model or a top model is relatively rare. Even without our experience on the matter, the average layperson can tell that the modeling industry has been shifting in recent years. All you have to do is look at fashion advertising. In trying to find the trends of faces modeling agencies will be looking for in late 2023 to 2024, we decided the best place to look were sites like IMG Models, Ford Models, or Elite Model Management. After all, modeling management sites are just a compilation of all of their active models on their books, their catalog works, runway appearances, and is more or less a zeitgeist of what the industry looks for. From there, we've tried to observe the general direction that fashion aesthetic was moving towards, but one thing was quite obvious. Models are chosen generally because they are attractive. We cover all of these criteria in more detail on this channel, but what exactly makes a face attractive? In other words, before getting into the smaller scale trends, we need to actually look at what physical attractiveness is, which is the focus of the channel. The fundamentals of an attractive face, as established by researchers such as Dr. Naini, the top researcher in his field actually, are averageness, coinophilia, secondary sexual characteristics or sexual dimorphism, proportion, strong tendofacial growth, also known as facial robusticity, which is your features like high cheekbones, robust jawline, prominent forward growth, and obviously symmetry, which most people already know, but also considering other factors like youthfulness, which is a given because most models do tend to be on the younger side, but there are some on the older as well. This allows models to enter the fashion industry in the first place, and then the different sub-trends in features, which we'll cover shortly, are further selected for, and could be the difference between being selected into a mother agency, a boutique agency, a top agency, perhaps a promotional agency. There are many different niches that are specifically looking for certain features, but there is a baseline that you do have to pass to be considered a model. Now, when we mention this idea of a general baseline that's required to be considered into the industry, we do mean this in the most casual of sense, because there will still be plus size models, models with disabilities, models with acne or scarring, but by and large, the standards have not really changed. And what we mean by this, you can look at agencies like Anti-Agency in the UK, which prides itself on being different to the modeling standards that most people may consider of being tall, skinny, white, and blonde, I suppose. But you'll notice that these models actually have more in common with regular other models than they do with the regular person, with strong jaws, clear skin, maybe unusual features, but nonetheless there is still a level of similarity that is required to be in the industry. And I made these exact comments, as the founder of Cooves to Vogue magazine last year. If you want to read my comments on Vogue, then there's an article. But the industry is actually still very slow to change. So there is always going to be this level of physical attractiveness, physical dentofacial definition or development that is required to be in the modeling bracket. So the point I'm trying to make personally off script to you guys is that most models do fit into a classical beauty convention, but the difference is in recent years we are moving away from having Eurocentrism be part of that beauty convention with a greater inclusivity of different racial features, which is the main key takeaway here. But there is still a level of classical beauty convention, which is dimorphism, symmetry, clear skin and youthfulness, and so on and so forth. This discussion is very important because agency selections do determine what faces we look at virtually everywhere in the months and years to come, and in a trickle-down effect do also affect other beauty standards in different pop culture areas. For instance, if you look at the bleached brow, that is more of a high fashion look that's not really common for the layperson, but when you do it, it's considered to be haute couture because it's typically seen in modeling runway shows. So it does have this trickle-down effect of affecting mainstream culture, so that's why modeling fashion trends do matter to some degree for the average person. Ultimately, the modeling industry is an economy of aesthetics. The model that a company selects is a direct determinant of the financial success of their product and launch. Clothing companies like Valentino have an immense understanding that their potential customer is going to be making a microsecond decision about their brand or product based on the appearance of the model themselves. I'll give you a personal insight as a client now for a modeling shoot, where for the launch of Skinstrick, which is my second company, me as the founder of Cooves, but also now as the founder of Skinstrick, we had an aesthetic criteria for what type of models we would select. The look we were going for would not require models with extreme facial characteristics like, say, Sunena, which could be more of an editorial look you would see on Vogue, but instead the faces have to be somewhat aloof, somewhat cool looking, and yet have average facial features that don't detract away from the product. Because again, this isn't a clothing product, it's a skincare product. You want the focus to be on the bottle, the packaging, those kind of aspects. Really, so the model is abstracted away from the photo shoot and is not meant to be the distraction from it. If you look at the shots, you'll see in some of them, the model is the focus and their personality does show, but more or less the focus is still on the bottles. So for a shoot like that, you probably wouldn't, as a client, choose faces with extreme facial robusticity or extreme facial features that can distract from the product itself. So when a client characterizes the look, this is somewhat instinctual. As Rose et al. 2002 states, even babies do have a preference for looking at attractive faces. And so when you think of it from that perspective, which of the faces would you rather have represent your brand? Which one would you, as a customer, purchase something from? And most people do choose the more attractive face. But then within this realm of attractive faces, we choose faces with extreme features, with less extreme features, more of a cute look, but nonetheless, all of these faces are attractive, which is the point we're trying to make. The most notable trend that has already made an impact in general discourse due to its understandable controversy is the resurgence of the heroin chic look. This translates as a push towards extreme facial leanness or gauntness, and you can think of Bella Hadid recently, but she wasn't the one that actually started the trend. To try and answer the question of why facial leanness, why is this a sought-after trait even for women, our team consulted some of the research by Michael Cunningham in 1986 entitled Measuring the Physical in Physical Attractiveness, Quasi-Experiments on the Sociobiology of Female Facial Beauty, and in conducting his experiments and interpreting the results, Cunningham reviewed over 50 previous experiments and research papers on the subject. His experiments conducted tried to establish a cause-effect relationship between specific facial features and attractiveness scores, especially for women. As such, the male participants judging nor the types of photos shown to them were randomized. Two main experiments relevant to us are one on neotenous features in women and another on mature features or ontogynous features in women. We noticed that neotenous features like large eyes, small noses, large foreheads were quite linked to female attractiveness, especially greater eye width, eye height, and reduced nose size. And this makes sense because these are sexual sexually dimorphic features, meaning that men on average have the exact opposite of these features to separate men from the women. However, mature features like the cheekbone width and cheek width, two separate things as you can see here, were also linked to feminine beauty, though not as strongly as neoteny. This seems counterintuitive because mature features are often the negation or the opposite of any neotenous features or youthful features. For example, large eyes are neotenous, small eyes are mature. But indeed, Cunningham's paper found a link there and also notes other research that found a similar connection. These maturity features, which might be considered masculine, were present in the most attractive feminine faces. Although neonate features predominate and may elicit caretaking and affection, the mature features could suggest status and encourage respect rather than condescension, because they do come with a level of age and wisdom. Attractive women have been rated as higher in leadership and dominance characteristics, according to Weisfield, Block, and Ivers, 1984. The combination of mature with neonate features also may signal that the woman is at an optimal age for sexual reproduction, because it is just at the cusp of either one of those barriers. But why specifically prominent cheekbones and lean or subtly hollow cheeks? Well, after all, nubility or maturity could be conveyed by the neonate feature of rounded cheeks in combination with other features of small eyes and a large nose. Thus, the perception of young adulthood status may not be the only factor in determining someone's facial aesthetics. There is something especially attractive about the mature feature of wide cheekbones and defined cheeks. This is what is creating the hyper-attractive top model look in Western culture. Perhaps this is because lean cheeks are not as sex exclusive as, say, a prominent brow ridge or a large nose, which we almost exclusively see on men to work better with their face shape than compared to women, just because of sexual dimorphism and biology. Either way, we've got the answer of why agencies might try to seek these mature, lean faces even in feminine models. Cunningham showed this feature is correlated to being hired, and it is also a more commanding feature, which is especially relevant in the modeling industry, where you usually display an intimidating aura rather than a cute and neotenous one. Commanding a runway is also an integral part of being a model in high fashion. Beauty is indeed not some inexplicable quality in the eye of the beholder. Just because we can't explain it doesn't mean somebody else cannot. But then again, the fashion industry is not only about beautiful faces, and we certainly don't want to use models as the hallmark for what makes a beautiful face. And they could perhaps have different aesthetic qualities, and you might prefer just an average person over the model. Contemporary models are already often distinct in their appearance due to their facial robustness or definition, but this trend pushes it to the furthest degree, which has been exacerbated due to the discoverability effect, where modeling agencies have an easier time than ever finding robust or lean faces, and the seeming ubiquity of plastic surgery in Hollywood and other pop culture, such as buccal fat extraction, cheek or chin implants or filler, which somewhat normalizes these extremes. Just think about it. 100 years ago, we probably wouldn't have seen this many attractive faces on our For You pages on TikTok, but now, more or less, it is becoming more and more common because of discoverability of algorithms pushing more attractive faces to the top, because that's the one that gets the most engagement. What's interesting about this is that the modeling industry is simultaneously selecting more curve plus-size models, such as Paloma Elisa, Liskra Lawrence, and Ashley Graham, but what is critical to recognize here is that these curvy models still have relatively strong dentofacial growth and leanness in spite of their body curvaceousness. So essentially, they still have the high cheekbones and strong jawline look, and it's just their bodily frame that's larger to suit their target market for clothing sales. And simply put, the face is what sells, and the body shape is more or less variable so that regular consumers can attain a greater consumer brand relationship, because not every person looks like what you typically think of when you picture a high fashion model. The idea of the body does change, but the face, as again I said in the Vogue article, does not change and has not changed for a long time. Besides the extreme facial leanness or the heroin chic trend, another trend we couldn't miss was the continued increase of androgyny selected by modeling agencies. In the previous years, we've witnessed a more universal acceptance of the pretty boy aesthetic, which is characterized with a less sexually dimorphic male bone structure, which reads as a softer, more feminized look on men. This follows in line with our discussion earlier. To look androgynous, you're going to want to have a mixture of mature and neotenous features, which is masculine and feminine features. This is especially the case for features like the eyes, the jaw, and nose, where our eyes are drawn first. Think of your K-pop figures or Timothée Chalamet types. They still appear identifiably masculine, but to a lesser degree and with more feminine features mixed into their aesthetic than old school fashion models like David Gandy or John Cordajarena. And this seems to be particularly engaging among younger demographics, which is why fashion brands are choosing faces to capture and reflect that. In regards to female androgyny this time, we're expecting a continuation, since the 80s fashion modeling, of a leaning towards male dimorphic jawlines in feminine models, which juxtaposes against their feminine features. Again, these are just trends, and you'll find that the majority of models do still have sexually dimorphic jawlines and eyes, so for women this means less protrusive brow ridges and softer jawlines. The main takeaway is that the prevalence of androgynous models is increasing and likely will increase into 2024. If we take a brief look through some of Fashion Week's Spring 2023 ready-wear lines, this is a huge emphasis on facial and bodily androgyny for both men and women's looks. This means that the female models will have characteristically masculinized bone structure, particularly around the jaw complex, as well as more intimidating eyebrows with a lower relative position not usually found in your average woman. Cara Delevingne is an obvious example of the aesthetic. The next feature, or rather facial characteristic, that modeling agencies have been selecting for in higher numbers than ever is racial or ethnic ambiguity. This one shouldn't come as a surprise, and it was impossible to miss when our team was looking at the data of agencies and runway shows, where supermodels like Shaina Shaikh is an example of this particular quality. Being Pakistani and Lithuanian gives Shaikh her unique and distinct appearance. This multi-ethnic quality allows her to be more approachable for a wider array of markets, but also blur the lines of different demographics. So based on the demands or the desires of the client, Shaina has more of an ability to transform or bend into a particular look due to the ethnic ambiguity of her features. From a business perspective, that means she can now target double the amount of client bases than one who has a very distinct ethnically known look. In the modeling world, one must emphasize what makes them different from the crowd in order to be memorable. Unique defining features or characteristics are what agencies look for, and Shaikh exhibits a look perfect for modern day modeling. Whether it's runway or print, the attention is on the model in fashion, which means the unique ethnically ambiguous look is definitely a part of what modeling agencies want for the face in 2023 and presumably into 2024. We all know that there is a big difference between an Instagram model and an actual sign model who walks high-end couture. A starting model should take digitals with little to no makeup. That's non-negotiable. Agencies want to work with someone with naturally clear skin, and they want to know what you truly look like. Agencies will likely immediately skip over any submitted photos that have full face of makeup, and we've asked agency owners this, and that's exactly, well, that's what they say. So is acne really a disqualifier for becoming a model? Well, no, but there is certainly a preference or trend towards clear skin because it gives a more seamless base to work with. From both the makeup artist, the hairstylist, all of the people on set will have an easier job if there is less to cover up. There are, however, agencies who are looking for models with blemishes or even some level of acne to differentiate themselves. Certain ads, maybe for skincare or makeup, want to display what their products can do. And for example, Kendall Jenner notes how she struggled with her skin in a Vogue Beauty Secrets video, where brands would jump at the opportunity to work with her and market her skin glow up as attributed to their products. In this case, having imperfect skin could be the asset, but it is not the general gist of what we're seeing. So circling back to the original question, how does this affect you as a consumer of fashion brands or just as an observer of the constantly shifting beauty trends? Well, obviously, if you want to become a model, these criteria are going to influence the things modeling agencies are looking for. Some of these trends may alienate consumers who view high fashion as an enigma or something they can't understand or don't want to understand. High-end fashion brands like Valentino, again, often prioritize design and aesthetics over practicality when creating their clothes. These brands tend to create clothing that is more focused on making a statement or conveying a particular artistic vision, often showcasing their creativity and craftsmanship through runway shows and couture collections, where the garment can be seen as works of art rather than everyday wear. As such, the model has to have a face that is also considered this artistic work of art rather than an everyday average looking face, and that's why there is also this selection for extreme facial features. That being said, most high-end fashion brands do offer more practical and wearable collections alongside their couture lines, and that is almost an entirely different brand of modeling, more so commercial modeling as opposed to high-end couture modeling, which has different agencies and different people on their books for a different look altogether. Overall, the faces on the runway seem to be straying from normalcy, with the aesthetic of the faces almost paralleling the artist's vision for the clothing. This may be off-putting to your average person, but I suppose that is the nature of polarizing artistry. Still, there are plenty of conventionally attractive models even in the subset of high fashion, and in fact they are probably the majority. However, it is interesting seeing where the fashion industry is going, and it's difficult to predict what the trend will be in 5 to 10 years from now. We'd like to hear your thoughts though. Do you think modeling agencies are looking for the right features, or should they be reverting back to the scouting criterias of say the early 90s, where the criterias were incredibly harsh and very concise in selecting for virtually the same look? If you look at 90s supermodels, they all look like the same person in different shades of skin color. That being said, if you do want to learn about your own face from a very research clinical perspective, written by our doctors and dentists, have them perform an assessment on your looks, then you can head over to the Coos website and order a report. If this is something you're interested in knowing how to improve the way that you look step by step, getting a second opinion before a surgery or any kind of big complication, or just you're curious, kind of like a 23andMe, but for your face, just out of pure curiosity, you want to know what we think about your face, then head over to the website and order a report. As always, I'll catch you all in the next one.